Hello and a very warm welcome to my workshop here in Sheffield, England. In this video I'll be repairing the audio side of 3 record players. An Alba model 212, a Bush model RP60 and a Philco model 68. None of which belong to me. I'm merely the service tech. Okay chaps, here before your eyes and for your delight is an Alba record player, model 212. From, I will guess, around the late 1950s, perhaps the early 1960s. The owner wants me to get it functional. He is happy to do the cosmetic work, and I have a shrewd feeling, therefore, this repair is going to be a fairly short one. Apart from the mains plug not being the 2 sheath prong type, it does not comply with current electrical regulations here in the UK. It will need to be replaced with a modern sheath type. The first thing I always do before servicing a record player or radiogram is lift the turntable and check the strength of the idler wheel. If it is in a perished condition, the repair bill will be expensive, quite possibly more than the owner is willing to pay. I've slid this circlip from the centre collar and lifted the turntable. I am now able to check the strength of the idler wheel, and I have to say it is in very good condition. Yes, there's plenty of elasticity. Yep, there's definitely life in the old dog. Turntable along with the circlip reinstalled, it is now time to open up this beauty and see what lies within. The inner cover removed, and note what the attached label says. Warning: disconnect from mains before removing cover. Well, I haven't as yet plugged this beauty into a main supply. So, remember the golden rule. There are high voltages associated with vintage valve equipment that are lethal. If you are following along with this video, you do so at your own risk. As can be seen, two valves on an aluminium chassis. One will likely be a UL84 output pentode, and the other will be very likely a UY85 rectifier. I'll get the 4BA box spanner and remove the 2 4BA nuts so I can extract this chassis. I was hoping somewhat I wouldn't need to remove the deck and plinth board. As can be seen, I had to so I could extract this amplifier. It's nothing special, a UY85 pentode output and a UY85 half-wave rectifier. It has had some work done to it in the past. The tone capacitor has been replaced, and also the UY85 anode anti-surge resistor, or more accurately here, the 2 390 ohm resistors in parallel and not be original. One of them looks to have had a burn up. I'm not going to play about finding a circuit diagram for this beauty. I'm going to jump straight in and replace the defective anti-surge resistors along with all the capacitors. I'll return once all of that is complete. I'm happy to say that I am making steady progress. The anti-surge resistor you see here is a 90 ohms wire wound type, I've also replaced the small tag strip with a longer one, so as to accommodate the reservoir and smoothing electrolytic capacitors. The 22 nanofarad tone capacitor has been replaced, and the 100 microfarad UL84 cathode bypass electrolytic capacitor has also been replaced. Right chaps, I'll continue replacing the rest of the components I intend to replace. And here are the two new 33 microfarad electrolytic capacitors installed. This one being the reservoir and that one being the smoothing. I've also replaced the original cathode resistor, which was this 1/4 watt 270 ohms, with this 180 ohms 1 watt. It is far more durable. Occasionally I can be ham-fisted. Due to considerations of heat, I decided to relocate the anti-surge resistor from the underside of this chassis to above. It was located just there. As I was unsoldering the 90 ohms wire wound resistor I'd fitted, I broke off one of its wires, so I've fitted a new 180 ohms wire wound type just here, and I've reused the old tag strip that was on the other side of this chassis. Since the original TC8 cartridge has gone turquoise green around the styli, poor thing, let's adjust the camera. I fitted this nifty little Chinese type. Normally they work quite well. We shall see. Before I do any testing, I will swap this non-sheathed pronged mains plug with this new one. Then I will do the first test. Record deck lubricated, amplifier reinstalled, and ready for its first audio test. Note, I have not screwed the plinth board down. Nor have I refitted the piece of board that covers this part of the record player. I might have to go back inside there and do some more probing around. This record player is plugged into the main supply and switched on. I'll put a 45 RPM disc onto the turntable and see what happens. The Last Time by the Rolling Stones was the first record I bought using my own money. I'd say from Sunday threepenny bits and sixpences my parents gave me for being quiet in church. Don't tell me I can't have this record playing for too long, as it will likely violate the copyright rulings. You saw and heard it play a 45 RPM disc. Now that I've tightened the plinth board down and refitted this cover, I'll now play a little of Wintertime Blues from this 33 1/3 RPM album entitled The Blues.
Hello, baby. How you feel today? I want to talk with you, baby, before I go away. Have you got time? Maybe to have a little talk with me. When the time is coming, and I'm worried as a man can be.
As far as this repair is concerned, I'd say this is a result. I did say I would not locate a circuit diagram for this Alba Model 212 record player, but here it is, here in this radio and television servicing 1963-64 by George Nunes Limited, page 42. I own a complete set of these radio and television servicing books. I did not consult this circuit diagram at any time during the repair. It is here for those of you who might be interested. I also said it is nothing special. You will find that one valve pentode audio output record player amplifiers usually conform, no matter what make or model, to a similar circuit layout. This wee pearl of a record player is a Bush model PR60, released in 1969 by the Rank organisation. The owner wants me to get it functional. He will do the cosmetic work. When I began my apprenticeship in June or July 1971, aged 16, for the first year it was my job to repair all record players, radiograms and radios that came into the service department. I certainly remember this model of record player, which also included the Murphy version. Before I open this wee pearl up, I can tell you its amplifier incorporates a UCL82 triode pentode audio valve and a UI85 rectifier valve. From what I remember, I haven't repaired one of this model in well over 30 years. They performed quite well and they sounded reasonably good for a small record player. I'll open the lid and so we can see what it looks like inside. You'll see at the rear right hand side the mains lead has been cut. I don't know whether you can see that when the camera's picking it up. Quite likely this record player was recently bought via an auction. I can't remember what deck the Rank organisation fitted into this model, but it looks very much BSR. I'll go on to remove the circlip from the centre collar, lift this turntable and check the strength of the rubber idler wheel. And it's looking good. Plenty of elasticity there. I'll remove this cover, lift the deck and plinth board. The amplifier is secured underneath here. Note what it reads on this cover. Warning, disconnect mains before removing this panel. Remember the golden rule, if unsure, do not meddle until you have become certified competent with electricity. Since electricity is lethal if disrespected. If you are following along, you do so at your own risk. Well, someone has been here before me. A wire off here. Disconnected there. A chassis nut is also missing. And a spurious rubber drive belt. Why? I honestly don't know. I'll remove the one remaining nut and remove this chassis for further inspection. I fitted a replacement mains lead with live, neutral and earth, and also fitted a sheathed prong mains plug with an internal 3A internal fuse. I don't know whether you can read that. I'll connect this unit into an isolated 240 volt AC supply and switch on. Before fitting the mains lead and plug, I went round checking the components on this chassis. Each one of the resistors gave readings well inside their tolerance banding, and only two capacitors were slightly on the suspect side. Overall, this wee amplifier is in good condition. After all, it is 50 years old. Doesn't seem to be a lot happening. This entire record player is dead. I'll just unplug it. I seem to remember the mains on indicator light also acts as a fuse. I'll check this light for continuity. If it reads OC, I'll use my jeweler's loop to identify its working voltage and ampage rating. My eyesight is not as good as it once was. Certainly nowhere near as good as it was when I was age 16. Back in a minute or so. Yes, this wheel lamp reads OC. Its rating is 6.2 volts at 0.3 amp. I've replaced it with one that is working at the same working voltage and ampage rating. The amplifier is now working well, plenty of volume to be had. Now I'll do something about this defective valve retaining spring. This valve retaining spring is now doing what it is meant to do. Hold this UCL82 valve into its base. Each valve base on this chassis has two small eyelets or lugs into which the retaining spring is clipped. don't know whether you can see that. The one on this side is missing. So someone has attempted to solder the spring directly onto the rim of the valve base, and it hasn't had the desired effect. One little trade secret is to use a chassis solder tag as a substitute eyelet or lug. One was already attached to this chassis, so I've turned it 180 degrees to utilise it for anchoring this valve retaining spring, and it is working well. Now I'll lubricate the deck and reassemble this wee pearl, ready for audio testing. And here we have it, chaps. One Bush record player, model RP60 from 1969, boxed up and working quite well. This 10-inch 78 RPM lookalike is a 33 1/3 RPM record entitled The Glenn Miller Story. It belonged to my late parents. They must have owned every Glenn Miller title released. This track is entitled Moonlight Serenade. It makes a change from listening to blues music. And now on 45 RPM is a disc my wife loves listening to. It is one of her records. The artist is Whitney Houston.
Your way, so I'll go, but I know I'll think of you every
I don't know the title of this song. I Will Always Love You. As I say, my wife loves listening to this style of music. Best get this one off here. I don't want to offend the copyright rulings. I must have been age 16 when I first repaired one of these Bush RP60 record players. Goodness, that was 48 years ago. The sales and service centre where I was apprentice had, among other radio and television brands, the dealership for Bush Murphy products. Bush radio and television prior to the 1990s was my #1 favourite brand. It was rare they presented me with a headache. For those of you who are interested, here is the circuit diagram for the Bush RP60 and also the Murphy A862G record players, as seen on this electrical and electronic trader service sheet 1977. I'm not going to go into the theory. Freeze frame if you desire information from this trader sheet. Some 40 or so years ago, I worked alongside a service technician who reproduced most of this circuit whilst making a signal tracer. He substituted the UCL82 triode pentode with an ECL82 and the UY85 rectifier with an EZ80. Of course, he was using a mains transformer, and he also incorporated 1/2 of an ECC83 double triode valve. I certainly remember it worked exceptionally well, and it lasted for years, certainly up to the time when he retired. Here on my bench is a Philco Partygram 3 model 68. I have a vague recollection this was manufactured by the British Radio Corporation, Thorn EMI. As can be seen, its cabinet has experienced some grief. Its lid is virtually hanging off. The owner wants me to get this beast electrically functional. He will do the cosmetic work. The mains plug is a non-sheath prong type. And its mains lead is sindel insulated. Both are non-compliant with current electrical regulations. They will be replaced with a length of double insulated mains lead onto which a sheathed prong mains plug will be fitted. My first task is to check the strength of its rubber idler wheel. It's a bit reluctant to move, this clip is. Oh, it's gone. Yeah, that's okay. Plenty of elasticity. Yeah, that is fine. This cover has been removed from here, and it reads, among other information, warning, do not remove this cover with the instrument connected to the main supply, 220 to 250 volts, 50 cycles per second, AC mains only. The golden rule is, do not meddle with valve operated equipment if you are not certified competent to deal with electrical equipment. Remember that electricity is lethal if disrespected. If you are following along with this video or any of my vintage electronics videos, you do so at your own risk. Now, I'll extract the chassis as per the instructions written on this cover. And what a sparkling wee gem we have here. No record player, manufactured around 1960, worth its salt. Would not have been complete without at least one Hunt's capacitor. Something of sheer delight for all connoisseurs who are following along. This wee amplifier is a 2-valver. UCL83 trail pentode output and UI85 rectifier constructed on a piece of Paxlin board. Off camera I'll check the strength of the resistors and capacitors so as to be ready for replacing with new where necessary. Yes, it's shaping up nicely. I don't have a circuit diagram for this record player that is immediate to hand. I have loaned the 1961, 62 and 62-63 radio and television servicing books to a friend. When working blind without a circuit diagram, it can be a bit of an hindrance towards progress. But I'm not going to let it get in my way. I'll carry on until this amplifier is ready for its first audio test. This amplifier, repaired and ready to be reinstalled, and a few resistors that measured beyond their outer upper limit of their tolerance bandings. They of course were replaced. 2 of the 6 resistors that make up this amplifier gave resistance readings within their respective tolerance bandings. The 100 nanofarad Hunts capacitor I spoke of earlier this is an endangered species measured well within its 20% tolerance rating, and surprisingly it didn't read leaky at 325 volts DC. Having been in this game since 1971, that, my friends, has to be a first. I honestly thought my capacitance bridge tester had developed a fault, but testing the Hunts capacitor a second time produced the same result. As you will imagine, it broke my heart to replace it, but replace it I did. Whilst I was on with that wee job, I replaced the anode triode to grid 1 pentode coupling capacitor, the tone capacitor and a feedback capacitor, and the reservoir and smoothing electrolytic capacitors. Both potentiometers have been cleaned, and this amplifier is now ready to be reinstalled. Amplifier now reinstalled, I continue cleaning and lubricating the deck. I felt it would be pointless connecting the amplifier to an AC supply at this stage, since not having a conventional metal chassis, its construction is on a Paxlin board. I really don't know why Philco didn't go for a printed circuit, but in their wisdom they designed it for what it is. It will be fairly noisy until its input has been connected to a crystal cartridge. The old crystal cartridge, you can see that, that started to disintegrate as I started to coax it out of its bracket or clip. Now, it is important to point out most record player decks of this type and age, as far as lubrication is concerned, will be very dry. They need cleaning and lubricating to function correctly. One of the more important areas under the deck is to apply a quick small burst of oil to the motor bottom bearing and apply a little lubricating grease to these areas. The rest of the moving parts can be lubricated with light machine oil. Having turned this deck over, it will be seen there are a few more places where lubrication is required. First, apply light machine oil to the motor top bearing. Don't overdo it with the oil, and avoid getting it onto the stepper spindle. If it should happen, clean it off immediately with isopropanol 90%. You definitely don't want it transferring onto the rubber idler wheel, especially along the edge here. It will cause a lot of slippage. Apply a small spot of light machine oil onto the centre bearing of the rubber idler wheel. Be careful not to get it onto the rubber part of the wheel, especially on the edge. And finally, remove the circlip from the centre boss of the crown cog. Gently ease it up off the centre boss, just there. I've already done this. There you go. Clean out the old grease from the centre kidney groove with isopropanol 90% and apply grease. Make sure that you haven't overdone it with the grease. Make sure also the wheel peg rotates, very important, not only for smoother running, it also minimises wear. Whilst the crown cog is off the centre boss, lift the top washer there, as well as the turntable bottom ball race. There we go. Clean it out with isopropanol 90% and pack it with grease like I have done. Replace the turntable bottom ball race and top washer like I did there, as well as replacing the crown cog. There's a few teeth missing, that's natural. This can be a little bit fiddly. That's it. Rotate it back and forth a couple of times to make sure, and if happy, replace the centre circlip. Like so. Oiling this bearing is optional. Wipe around the inside of the turntable with isopropanol 90%. Replace it like so, and replace the centre circlip. There you go. One deck that has been lubricated. And here we have it. It's first audio test. The Rolling Stones, Let's Spend the Night Together. Plenty of volume. And the deck is well lubricated, works fine. Yeah, very good. I'll try it out on 33 1/3. And here we have it on 33 1/3. Rocks in my bed.
I'm going back down that sunny road. Well, the war is over. I'm going back down.
Plenty of volume there.
I ain't getting nothing in Chicago but my room and board.
Yes, very nice. It works well. Pleased with that. I can't send this record player out like this. Pride won't let me do such a thing. I'll refit the lid and give the deck a quick wash, or what my wife would refer as a man wash or clean. I'm not going to say for 1/2 minute my repair to the lid of this record player bears anything remotely like finesse. Its only attribute is it is strong. Yes, I've applied a little drop of warm water with a squirt of washing up liquid or dish soap to this deck and the inside of this record player. Not that anyone would notice. I suppose my wife would class my cleaning efforts, as she normally does, as being an apology of a man clean. I'm not sure what the owner of this record player is intending to do. He might recover the entire cabinet inside and out with Rexine or Tolex. All he wanted was me to get it functional. There was no mention about fixing the lid back in place, but now that it's done and dusted, I suppose he will be happy. At least I hope so. I said, having completed the repair of the first record player, it was a result. More to the point, each repair turned out to be a result. I've done what the owners expected me to do, and that was to get each record player functional. Now, having done that, I can close this workshop down for the night and get some shut-eye. I thank you for viewing this video. Your time and interest is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care and God bless. From Phil.